Welcome to my channel, Soldier's Legacy, where stories of courage, resilience, and battlefield brilliance come alive. Stories that remind us that true strength isn't always loud. Sometimes it's buried beneath the sand, waiting for the right moment to rise. Where's the shooter? The SEAL team leader barked into his radio, scanning the dunes with growing frustration. Sergeant Kira Westland had been buried in the sand for 11 hours, invisible under 2 feet of desert and camouflage netting, while an entire platoon searched the range looking for her. When she finally rose from the ground 30 meters behind their command post, covered in grit and holding her rifle steady, the look on their faces said everything about what they had just learned. Kira Westland was 27 when she arrived at the Naval Special Warfare Training Area near Yuma Proving Ground, Arizona, carrying a reputation that made most people skeptical before they met her. She had grown up in the high desert of New Mexico, where her uncle ran a small ranch and taught her to track animals across miles of empty country. By 14, she could read wind, patterns in dust, and find water by watching where birds circled at dawn. The training area sat in a basin surrounded by dunes that shifted with every storm of place, where heat shimmered by 0900, and visibility dropped to nothing when the wind picked up. Kira had been assigned as part of an Army liaison program evaluating advanced concealment techniques for desert operations. The SEALs running the course had requested someone with field experience in arid environments, and her file showed 3 deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan. With a scout platoon, no matter where you're watching from tonight, you know what it's like when people look right past you. If this story speaks to you, hit that subscribe button, because this one's about to get real. Kira enlisted in the Army at 21. A year after her uncle died and left her the ranch with taxes she couldn't pay, the recruiter told her the Army valued people who understood terrain. She scored high enough to qualify for combat arms and trained as a scout. Her uncle a Vietnam-era reconnaissance Marine had taught her that survival was about patience and the ability to become part of the landscape. Those lessons became her foundation at Fort Benning, where she learned to build hides, conduct long-range observation, and operate behind enemy lines. She didn't shoot often, but when she did, her targets never got back up. At Yuma, the briefing room was packed. 20 SEALs, their instructors, and Commander Holstead listened as he explained the exercise. A single scout would be inserted into a 12-square-kilometer area. The SEAL platoon had 24 hours to locate and identify the scout. If they succeeded, their doctrine was sound. If they failed, it meant they needed to rethink how they trained for desert warfare. When Holstead introduced Kira as the scout, the room went silent. Lieutenant Corian, the SEAL team leader, asked how much desert experience she had. 18 months, she said calmly. The room shifted uneasily. Senior Chief Driscoll muttered that this was a SEAL exercise, not a test for an Army scout. Bringing her in, he said, felt like lowering the bar. Holstead shut him down. The tone was set. Nobody expected her to last more than a few hours. At 0400, Kira was dropped off 3 kilometers from the search zone. She had 12 hours before the SEALs began their sweep. She dug in literally. Her hide was 18 inches deep, shaped to match the natural slope of the dune. She covered herself with sand and netting until even a trained eye wouldn't spot her from 20 meters away. When the SEAL platoon began their search at 1600 hours, they moved flawlessly tight formations, bounding overwatch, thermal optic scanning, but they were predictable. They cleared low ground, then high. They checked the obvious hide sites. They passed within 15 meters of Hurt, Weiss. She didn't move, didn't breathe harder, didn't exist. By midnight, the SEALs were frustrated. Commander Holstead extended the exercise another 8 hours. By 0800 the next morning, Lieutenant Corian called a regroup. The platoon gathered near their vehicles, dusty and exhausted. That's when Kira rose like a ghost 30 meters behind them. She stood silently for 5 seconds before anyone noticed. Driscoll froze, mid-sentence. His eyes widened. Then he pointed. When the SEALs turned and saw her, covered in sand and shadows, the silence was absolute. Holstead walked over. How long were you there? 11 hours, she said. How close did they get? 15 meters. Commander turned to the SEAL team. If an Army scout can stay hidden from a full SEAL platoon for 11 hours, gentlemen, we have a serious problem. Driscoll walked with her to see the hide. He stared at the shallow depression, at the way it blended perfectly with the dune. I walked past this twice, he muttered. Never saw a thing. How'd you know where to set up? He asked. Kira smiled faintly. I figured you'd never check this close to your own command post. The next day, Commander Holstead held a formal after-action review. Kira explained her methods, how she used the SEAL's own patterns against them, how she built hides that belonged to the terrain, not ones that tried to fight it. Holstead listened, and then said, We're incorporating your techniques into our next training cycle. I want you teaching desert concealment to SEAL snipers. For 8 weeks, Sergeant Kira Westland trained some of the Navy's best to think like the desert itself. Senior Chief Driscoll later apologized privately. I underestimated you, he said. You changed how I look at reconnaissance. Kira didn't brag. She didn't need to. She just looked out over the silent dunes that night and whispered to the desert wind. What her uncle had always said, the best operators are the ones nobody ever sees coming, and in that moment. Under a sky full of stars, she knew he would have been proud. This was Soldier's legacy, where we honor the unseen, the unspoken, and the unstoppable. If you believe in skill over size, and silence over pride, and in warriors who rise from the dust itself, then you're in the right place.